Lake Superior, Gitchee Goomee. In Ojibwe, it means big lake or all-powerful water. Its climate is diverse, dangerous at times, and most other times peaceful, pleasantly tantalizing all of the human senses. It lures you to come closer and closer until the spirit of Gitchee Goomee slowly wraps its roots around your soul. You cannot break away. For the most part, you do not want to. And so over time, you surrender and travel deeper and deeper into its divine aura. The water above and below, the land, the wilderness surrounding Gitchee Goomee is engulfed in mysteries, legends, and spirits. Some are physically present, permanent landmarks, and others make occasional appearances from the dark cellars of the human mind. The mysteries of the Big Lake go back over 2,000 years. The legends of the first peoples, the Anishinaabe, developed into life and moral teachings. There were incredible mystical spirits called Manitous that roamed the earth, and to many Anishinaabe, at some level, they still do. The stories surrounding Manitous provide an understanding of Anishinaabe culture and spiritual heritage, enabling a deep understanding of worth and relevance, says Basil Johnson, one of the foremost Indigenous authors in Canada. Johnston said the Manitous were just as much a reality as were trees, valleys, hills, and winds. Out of many of his heritage and cultural books, one is solely on Manitous. Basil Johnston shared a story of his mother, warning him as a small child not to wander into the woods. My mother told me about wendigos, giant cannibals, and little people who lurked in the woods waiting to seize and carry off disobedient children. Basil Johnston researched many legends and featured 12 different Manitous, some intertwined with others. Of course, the legends were not all about scaring children to be obedient. The storytellers today present Manitous as good beings, providing life lessons and morals, starting with the greatest Manitou of all, Kitchi-Manitou, the great mystery that created the world leading up to the land of the Great Turtle, or as referred to by the newcomers, North America. Lake Superior is a deep well of Manitou legends and many other stories of spirits and signs of spiritual inspiration, both good, dangerous, and bad. The Little Cedar Spirit Tree, sometimes referred to as the Witch Tree, is on Minnesota's North Shore. It is a 300-year-old twisted, gnarly eastern white cedar, said to have spiritual powers that can help or sink travelers navigating Superior's deep waters. It is said that in the haunting darkness of night, it can afflict an innocent mind to nightmares. There is a 200 to 400-year-old red ochre image on the Agawa Cliffs, known as Michipicoten, an underwater lynx with a spiny back and tail who lives in a deep underwater cave. If angered, it can swing its tail, conjuring up gale force winds and waves up to 40 feet high. However easily angered it may be, it is also fiercely protective for those that pay it respect. the legend of Ojibwe Princess Green Mantle at Kaknevicius Falls. With the threat of an attack from the Sioux, she infiltrated the enemy and guided the Sioux tribe over the falls to their deaths, saving her village. It is said that given the right conditions, you might see her face appear in the mist. The legend of giants Omet and Naomi at Wimet Canyon. The all-powerful Kaknevicius introduced Omet to his daughter Naomi. They fell in love. One day, Omet wanted to show off his strength to Naomi, and he raised a mountain. The peak broke off and killed Naomi. Omet buried her in a shallow grave. Kaknevicius found her and in his anger turned Omet to stone and placed him on the canyon wall, watching over Naomi's grave for all time. Old Woman Bay Nokomis. Given the right light, one can look at the end of the mountain and see the face of an old woman looking out onto the lake. A small tip, her chin is in the water. Her name is Nokomis, the demigod Kaknevicius' grandmother, also known as the Old Woman of the Wind. There are many other legends, stories of the spirit world on and around Lake Superior, and they are not exclusive to the Anishinaabe peoples. Sightings of apparitions and unexplained events related to shipwrecks, lighthouses, or tragedies go as far back as the first European arrivals. Some say the spirits of the dead are in limbo, having died suddenly and unable to leave the physical world. Many skeptics apply scientific explanations, lighting, and other weather conditions. Others need to be frightened out of their shorts or actually interact with spirits to believe they exist. Storytellers painting images into the imagination of listeners, readers, or visitors leave folks with an open question. Believe it or not? However, in the machinations or dreams of a child, spirits and faces can be very real, very much alive, without explanation, some friendly and some not. In the 1960s, in and around the Wawa and Michipicoten region of Lake Superior, supernatural faces have found a conduit to the real world through the mind of an innocent young boy. And decades later, thousands of those faces have come to life in a variety of forms. Affectionately named Spike by his grandfather, Shane Mills has tamed the countless images swirling in his mind, transforming them into eastern white cedar, spalted maple, black walnut, birch, cherry, and other species of wood. He is a master carver, an artist, and an author of a vivid children's book. Spike Mills invites us into his Faces of Gitchee Goomee world and his world-class fine art inspirations from deep within his heart and his soul. He has ironically located his workshop in the very environment where many of his Goomies reside, the forest.
It took me about a year, and once I was used to it, I was like, man, this is my place, man. This is my place of refuge. It's where I can create. I can come here anytime and do my thing, man. And in the dead of winter at 2 in the morning, it's even more fun when I'm creating some sort of ghastly skull or something. And Yeah, so this is my main material remover. It's a double chain. As you can see, this is a little finer, so it's less material being removed and more carving and shaping sort of thing. And then the next step down, once that's done, would be the burr for kind of quasi-smoothing and shaping as well.
The secluded forest workshop in and around a cargo van, commonly referred to as an ice cream truck, is so apropos to Spike's artistic genius, and no doubt exposes a stronger inspiration and connectivity to the faces of Gitchee Goomee swirling in his mind.
I can let go with the Goomies, I can have fun with it, and I mean, yeah, it's crooked right now, and I'm gonna straighten all that out. You know, it's all gonna straighten out, it's all gonna come together and be a wonderful Goomee.
Inspiration comes from an inner momentum tapping at your heart and your mind. It is energized from the soul and provokes creative thought, expression, focus, determination, and action. We arrive at Spike's studio, his gallery, located in the south wing of the historic Lakeview Hotel in downtown Wawa. And it is here that Spike's passion breathes life into the Gitchee Goomees, the masks, and many other fine art creations.
So growing up on the shore of Lake Superior, I just remember thinking, you know, these are faces, they're faces on the shore of Gitchee Goomee, faces of Gitchee Goomee, and that's kind of how it all morphed for me as a kid. You know, because that's what I saw and what I was kind of replicating, or thought I was, replicating what I saw all the time on the shore, lurking in the woods or in the bush just above the shoreline and what have you. The name kind of just became synonymous with what I was seeing. Like, you know, they were Goomies, Gitchee Goomees. They were kind of ominous, I don't want to say dangerous per se, but more ominous, kind of dark, lurking. You know, they could conjure up all kinds of things in the mind of an 8-year-old, which is kind of when they started appearing for me. And you'll hear me refer to the camp all the time because it's where very formative years growing up, you know, took place at the camp. But anyway, a lot of my creativity was there during our summers there. So, and I just kind of, that manifested with these faces that I saw when I was young. So that more of that creativity, that's where this came about. The camp is on Lake Superior at Michipicoten Harbour, Oakes Cove. The old, right across from the old ore docks. So if you're at Sandy Beach proper looking due west, you'd be looking at the lighthouse, and then just to the right of it is our camp, and then to the right of that again would be Michipicoten Harbour. Yeah, right at the end of Oakes Cove there was an open field with some houses there back in, I'm talking now back in the late 60s. And I remember seeing faces then, you know, or kind of renderings of faces, or imagining that faces were there, and then they would just kind of, the more I did it, the more they would appear on their own without even imagining it, you know, but it would be my imagination would take them even further and kind of manipulate them in my mind.
How did you first relate those faces, those images into your art? What was your first, was it drawings, was it sketches?
Clay, No, it was clay. Because we had a clay deposit, we do actually all around on Superior. That's one thing we're known for, is the clay up here, the gray clay. So we had a deposit that we worked from it's still there actually. As a child, it was a deposit right on our beach. We would dig down there and I'd go pull out huge balls of clay. I'm talking clay like a ball the size of a basketball or whatever. And I used to make faces. So every summer, as I was making faces, my cousins would live there. I had 3 female cousins. We were all around the same age, and other cousins would come and stay at various times throughout each summer. But for the most part, the 4 of us would move there and stay there, and so it was just something that we did as art. Created this clay stuff, and everybody was always doing all sorts of different things. But of course, I was invariably always doing faces out of this clay. So that was my first medium. So that's one of the originals, sort of in clay, my newer ones. Was doing clay for the most part, but I did my first whittle at a really young age. I would have been, gosh, it was 1968, so I was just young. I was 7 years old. I whittled a face on a piece of kindling, but really, for the most part, I just did clay sculpture until I was probably my late teens, I guess, just before I was 20. I started carving wood.
And the bigger Goomies that you're working on right now, when did they come on the scene?
They come on the scene in the early 2000s when I had kind of just revisited some Easter Island stuff, because I was always passionate about her since I was a child. But revisiting that and looking at, somehow came across a picture of a really interesting tiki that I just really liked and wanted to replicate. But I wanted to do a tiki and kind of put my own spin on it, and voila, Gitchee Goomee was born. So it was an easy transition into getting the form of a face, you know, with the depth of the eyes and the profile and that sort of thing, the distance between the lips and the nose and the eyes and the nose and the centering and what have you. It was an easy transition to do because I was doing fine masks, fine art masks. And so yeah, like I said, it was just the transition was simple, and then I could let go of some of this more serious stuff and have fun with the Gitchee Goomee. And that's kind of, like I said, that's where it was born. And they, in a really short amount of time, they became hugely popular. And that's where we are.
Lake Superior can be dangerous for those who live, work, and play on the water, its shoreline, and the wilderness surrounding it. Tragically, Spike heard of and experienced several tragic events in his younger days that today is behind the inspiration for the Into the Blue series of masks and other fine art.
And so what happened was, his name was Robert Daigle, Hot Rod Daigle, native dude out of Batchewana, between here and Sault Ste. Maria.
Yes.
Big family. The Daigles, well known, tough native dudes, man, all fishermen. Anyway, my dad can remember Robert as a kid. So again, I told you, we were commercial fishermen. We had a 60-foot tug. So one year when I was 18, Robert Daigle ran the boat for my dad. So we fished that whole summer and lived on that boat, he and I. And like we were up at Michipicoten Island, Pakasa Harbour, Marathon, all these places, and we lived basically on the boat all summer. So he was like a mentor to me on the lake. Anyway, that year before we went out and started fishing, Doug Thompson and Robert's brother, Albert, were fishing out of an outboard right at the lighthouse, and their boat capsized. Doug Thompson immediately went down with, went down, not with the nets. So Albert, they got Albert out because he went down with the nets, but he was tangled up in the nets. So we went out and pulled him up on board. His brother Robert pulled him in. He was dead. Doug was gone. They never found Doug. So here it was 2 years later. Robert was fishing up at Pick River, and same sort of way as his brother. He was fishing out of an outboard. His boat caught fire and he drowned. He ended up. So in the spring of the year, it was a bad situation. It was a bit of a sea going on, and he couldn't really get up on the rocks, and that the boat caught fire. He was burned up pretty bad. Tough dude, man. He tried everything to get up on the rocks, even though he was busted up and burned and everything else. But so he drowned. Anyway, the lake took him too. And you know, we used to have long conversations just about how, you know, he wondered about his brother and all that sort of thing, and then he ended up, it was just strange. He ended up drowning a couple years later. It's weird, man. And he and I would talk long about it, because I was just a kid and I was curious about it, you know. And he kept saying, you know, that, you know, the lakes, it's not gonna take me, man, you know, and it had taken Albert. I think it took a brother before that, if I'm not mistaken, through the ice at Batchewana when they were all kids. So anyway, I think it's just, I didn't have the courage or something to be able to call it a self-portrait. And now I do. That's what it is, man. It's the lake has a hold of me, and so this is how it is. Part of me is I'm hiding. That's probably why you don't see the full face. And a big part of it is my buddy, Robert, who, you know, we don't get to see all of them. So every once in a while, when something wells up in me like this, I get to revisit it, and I get to keep it all in that same series, kind of don't really change the idea of it, but I certainly can change the look of it, because every one is unique and different, its own, but the idea is still the same. It's a children's story about two children who are on a cedar raft and inadvertently go through this storm on Lake Superior, go to an island where, it's called Goomee Island, where the Gitchee Goomees talk. And they bring the kids on an adventure on the island, show them where they came from, etc. And without revealing too much. But the main premise of the book is to show kind of how the lake is alive. How I really believe the lake is alive as this huge body of water that's just alive. It has this energy and it's alive. And so that's kind of the premise of the story. Yes. I think more than anything, it's just the mystery of it, the mystery of the lake, the energy of the lake. And my wild imagination, and that kind of sums it up. It kind of sums up where that book came from. But you know, I gotta say one thing that I think about often too, late as I'm getting older, is when they did kind of start. I don't know, like they were almost like beckoning me, almost calling me, for lack of a better word, almost daring me to go to them. Each Goomee was like that. Come on over here, in this whispering sort of way, but an ominous way. Of course, I never went. I was just like, I guess, afraid or whatever, like to go toward one. You know, but it was almost like they were beckoning me. It's just this weird kind of feeling I have as I get older when I think about it, and how they used to kind of manifest in my mind, you know. So So they'd always be calling me, like, and of course I never went, never once ever. I created my own. They would disappear, and then I would create my own in clay. But I gotta say too, something that I learned years ago when I decided to do this full time. Said, okay, this is what I need to do it. First off, I need to get out of bed every single morning and devote my day to my art. At least start with that, with my morning coffee sort of thing, and then. But then I read a quote or an interview by somebody who was interviewing Tennessee Williams, our well-known famous playwright, and the person had asked him when, I can't remember quite what the question was, something to do with inspiration, and when did he wait around for inspiration to kind of kick in, or did he kind of see it throughout each day and really, like, how did that all work? And he said, no, are you kidding? I get out of bed every morning at 9 o'clock and I start writing. And he said, inspiration, I create my own inspiration. He said, if I waited for it, he said, I'd be starving in the street, which I found that really super interesting. And that changed, that was a big milestone for me. And I was, this ability now, all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, man, I just have to get up and I have to do it. Never mind this waiting for something, some face to appear to me or whatever. My head was full of faces, man. It's just like, go do any one of them or combinations of them. You know, there was no excuse. And so it's always been like that, and that's been years ago. And I mean, it has always been like that. My day is about my art first and foremost, and then we can kind of go from there. You know, I do have days where there is no art in it, but I'm certainly thinking about it, and it began with my art and usually ends with it.